What I'm doing here is marking the background. I don't necessarily need to do it, but with a complicated carving like this, you want to be sure what's background, what's being taken away, and what is the subject. It's very easy to take wood away that you want to keep. So, be clear about what's the background, and then we need to think about the depth. Now, I don't want it to be very deep. Here it's quite a shallow relief, and I'm thinking something like this. I've marked it on the side. I think, yeah, that looks about right. And I've put that onto my depth gauge. Now this depth gauge is one that we've made on the site, and I'll put a link below this video so you can make one. And this will be our guide to here, bits in the middle where we can't see. So we'll get the background looking pretty much the same. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but it wants to be looking the same. So we've got our depth, we've got our background. Now, looking at the carving itself, I can see that I have some big areas around the carving, and I have some really small areas. So let's just deal with the bigger areas first. Say like this one here, for example. The standard method is to lower the background and level it, and then to set in the edge. And that's what I'm going to do, rather than what I've said before is to round the form and move the form into the edge, because I want all these to look the same. So if we're looking the same, we need to make sure we've got the edges right. So normally we would start by, and we will start here, just lining in. In other words, we'll take a V-tool around the edge of these forms as best we can. And as I come down, I want to make sure that the good side of the V-tool, the one that's giving a smooth cut, is to the hair, to the subject. And same on this side here. This is coming all the way along here. So I'm just inside the line. Low level grip. Stop in there. I'll make that a bit deeper. So this is all waist. So I can be a bit loose with this, but I am inside. I'm going to come around here. I'm just doing this by eye at the moment. Cutting this in here. Cutting around here, leaving a little bit of a... I leave the paper on. I think it's good for you to be able to see what's going to be left and so on. But you could of course draw this directly on the wood. So I've lined it in, and that protects this big area. Then I'm going to take my deep gouge, which could be like this, a number 10 or even a number 9, something deep, and I'm going to go across the wood like this and start removing the background. So when I come to the hair itself, when I come to the subject, I'm going to just turn it like this. Use that cut out there like that. Then I'm going to look at my depth. Yep, you can see quite a bit to go. So I might go around a second time. Take this down a little bit lower. Like this. And along here. Another pass. So once I've done one and I get a sense of where that depth is, I can probably go more directly to it. See what I'm doing here? This is called rocking it through the cut, so I'm not wiggling it, I'm just rotating it. Like that. I'm trying to line those, the bottom of these cuts, just on the sort of depth I want. So I put this on here, and we're pretty much on there, a little bit more. Like here. Now this bit here is very difficult to get in with that tool, so I can switch to a narrower tool. I can come in here as best I can. And this is going to be one of the tricky places where we need to work. But for now I'm just going to go across and take all these bigger pieces out. You'll be left with a sort of mess around the edge, which we'll clean up. But this floor here, in this area, all the big areas, we'll get to just above our finished surface, which we'll check with our marking gauge. So there's just a fraction left there to finish off. So let's go around and do all those bits first, whatever the big picture bits are. So I've been round the bigger areas, getting them to the depth, and I'm pretty sure when I look at them I can sort of see the background underneath going on, which is great. One of the things about this lining in like this is that it protects the edges. Now these are going to be rounded over here, the legs, so I'm not too worried about those, but certainly when you come in, if you come in this way across the grain, you're likely to bruise the edge of this wood. So you've got to be careful, and that's why that extra bit that the V-tool has left is very useful just there, because we want a nice tight line as we go around. So having done that, the next thing to do, just with these areas, before you leave it, is to nibble back some of that excess wood towards that line. So this is a high angle grip, and you can just come straight down like this, a little twist, and just nibble that back, like so. You could do this one at a time. I tend to keep the same tool and the same sort of thing going on as long as I can, so I tend to do this all in one go. So I'm nibbling down, but I'm not cutting through into the background, I'm still into that rough area, but that's going to allow me to clean up to this edge very easily. So I'm going to come here, work my way around, little twist like this, like that. And where I've got a bigger area like this here, which is like I can actually start nibbling that back a little bit at a time until I come right in as far as I can go into there and back around here. So just quietly nibbling that away. Don't worry about the corners, we can set those in. And be careful of that line here at the edge because we don't want to go over it. So just a fraction inside still, allowing us to clean up. If it's really hard wood, you might use a mallet. But that's the sort of thing. So you've got a big mess in here, but you're down just above the surface that way, and you're just above the line this way. So let's work my way all the way around these areas now. Get this done. A tight area like this might be tricky, so you can leave that for the moment, but you get most of this out. No junctions, no really tight areas. I'm leaving these bigger sections like that for the moment. It looks a bit of a mess, but that's okay, it's a good mess. And what I'm going to do is turn to these ones that are a bit smaller. Now the problem with those is that I can't really get this V-tool in because it's got a chisel part here in the keel, so it tends to bind in there. So I can't really use the V-tool, but what I can do is just go straight to a deep gouge. So I've got to be particularly careful now. I'm going to come along, I'm picking a narrower gouge than the one I've used elsewhere. Obviously I use that one over here, it's a bit narrower, and I'm just going to work across the grain, and I'm going to give that little rocking cut, a little shimmy like this. What's really important is that I don't go across into that edge here. So I might even do a little bit like this in this way. So I'm just basically going to just remove some of that wood, this lowering stage, as best I can, And I've got this level here to eye through, so I don't need to necessarily use my marking, my depth gauge. So I go as far as I can in the middle, like so. That's about the middle. And then I'm going to do the same trick of pulling that back now to the line. Like so. And I might just check that a little bit here. So it's the same, but I've missed out the V-tool part. And I want the bottom of this to be the same as the bottom of that. So I'll go around and do that one. And I'll do the same thing here. But again, it's even narrower. So although I can use this tool in some of it, and again, cross the grain is a good way of working. I can switch again to an even narrower tool. I'll start ploughing that up both ways, cross the grain. And when I get to the depth in the middle, I can come back and do my nibbling, like this. So again, it looks a bit of a mess, but it all lays the foundation for the next stage. Now while I've got these tools in my hand, I can actually come to some of these parts here, and I can just pull some of those back. So like between this leg and this nose, I can pull this back a little bit. So I can do a little bit of refining of these ones. Anyway, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work my way around all these bits here. Cut down. And this cut, really important, it's not through into the background, still into just above what we'll have as our finished cut. So here it's getting tighter. I can switch to that little one. Nibble that back here. Something I didn't mention is that it's quite difficult, in fact impossible, to get into these really tight little corners here. But we'll just leave those for later, so we're getting as far as we can. And we can see it here in the middle, where the three ears come together. We'll do exactly the same. We'll do our best with this tiny little section here. Hollow it out. And switch to a narrower tool and we'll start nibbling this back like this. And we can only go so far into there as we can, and that will do for now. And what we've done is we've protected everything. I'll lift this up in a minute and you can see the end of this stage. We'll just summarise what we're trying to do. At the end of this stage, it should look something like this. We've got the background lowered pretty much to where we want it to be at these different points. We've got the edges taken up to close to where we want those edges to be. We've protected the important elements, not worried too much about these. Looks, as I said, a little bit of a mess, but it's an ordered mess. We know what's happening. So we get it as far as this, and then we can go on to the next stage, setting in the edges.